Hi, welcome back. This is a supplement to the discussion that we've been having in the series regarding fatherhood and fathering. Usually, men tend to have a deficit of information regarding child custody and visitation in contrast to many females. And so this information is directed towards males to give you a little bit more information, just very quickly, basic information about child custody and visitation. Okay, so first of all, when a court is deciding child custody, it's supposed to be gender neutral, meaning that there's not supposed to be any special consideration given to mother or father simply based upon the sex of the parents in making the custody determinations. And so it's supposed to be, the test is the best interest of the child when we're talking about parent versus parent in a custody situation. When it's a non-parent and a parent, depending on the jurisdiction, they tend to look at issues such as the adequate care test, and can the parent provide adequate care for the child with assistance. Okay, so one of the things that the court looks at when making this determination is what's considered the psychological parent, the primary caretaker. And so that is an issue that is taken into consideration, and it's pretty important because it basically looks at who was the parent who was providing the majority of that day-to-day care. Now, this can sometimes result in a disadvantage for fathers who were the primary breadwinners and having a wife that stayed at home with the children. I'm not going to say that that results in fathers not getting custody. That's not the case. But it is a consideration in terms of maintaining some sense of stability for the children. Okay, so let's go over the primary types of custody. You have physical custody and you have legal custody. And there are two types of physical and legal custody. First, you have joint physical custody and you have joint legal custody. Now, joint custody means that the custody is shared between the parents. And joint physical custody would mean that the parents share time with the child, having the child in residence in their home. That would be joint physical custody. And there are all sorts of variations of how joint physical custody might work out. And the parties usually will go through mediation to help them to come up with a really good parenting plan that's going to meet the needs of the child. A common strategy is to have the child with one parent 2 days a week, let's say Monday and Tuesday, and then with the other parent on Wednesday and Thursday, and then every other weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the child goes between the parents. So 1 week they would be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the mother, and then the other Friday, Saturday, and Sunday they would be with the father. And so that's sort of a common dynamic in terms of those joint physical custody situations. Now, legal custody is basically the parental right to make decisions regarding health, education, and welfare for the child. And so a parent doesn't necessarily have to have physical custody to have legal custody. And so legal custody is really about that decision making, whereas the physical custody is about having that physical presence. Now, there are other types of custody related to physical and legal, and it's sole custody. And actually, sole custody is what parents usually are fighting about. And there's a lot of fantasy about, the parent's going to get sole custody and they're going to have the child all the time. They're going to be making all of the decisions. The other parent is never going to see the child again. And that actually is rare. It's rare when both parents request custody, and there's nothing significantly wrong with either parent, usually both parents are going to get some form of custody. And the likelihood of one parent getting sole custody in terms of legal custody and physical custody, it's pretty slim, and would only happen in some unusual situations. But usually, if all things considered, both parents look pretty equal, the courts will tend towards looking at joint physical and joint legal custody. Now, of course, there are some situations where sole custody is just practical. I mean, there's no other option. If a parent is incarcerated, for instance, or if a parent physically cannot take care of the children, or if the parent is out of the country, they are not a resident in the United States, then one parent would likely have that type of custody. But courts vary, and they can come up with all sorts of creative custody arrangements across state lines and country lines. And so another creative custody arrangement is split, where the children actually split the time. So it may be that, for instance, let's say a family is really large and there are 10 children and there just happen to be 5 boys and 5 girls. And so a court could order that so that neither parent in their single parenting space is overwhelmed with 10 children. And so it might be that, all 5 of the boys go with one parent for a certain amount of time, and then they switch up, and then the girls go with that parent that certain amount of time. So the parents would have 5 and 5 versus 10 at one particular time. And when parents don't get custody, the request is often for visitation. And so the court can also order a visitation schedule, where the parent would possibly have the child overnight one night, or they might have them on the weekend, maybe alternating weekends, or they might have them one night out of the week to have dinner with them, and then some special arrangement during the summertime. Okay, so that's basically a really good summary, a general summary of the different types of child custody and the different tests for child custody. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, you can put them in the comment section. Hopefully this information was helpful, particularly for the fathers, as we're going through the father and child series. And fathers are hopefully thinking a little bit more about some of their options, and also thinking about making sure that they are actively involved in their child's life. Now on the screen you see Kevin Federline and Dwayne Wade, and I put those up there because often there are rumors, and when people start talking, there are rumors that fathers never get custody, and that the courts are really mean to fathers, and there's a prejudice in terms of fathers versus mothers. And some attorneys would argue that also. I think, though, all things considered, men often get custody. So if the situation is right, men often get custody. They often get sole custody in situations where the mom is incapable of taking care of the children at that time in the best way possible. So the idea that men never get custody, that is actually false. I put these two up there because, of course, some people might say, well, only wealthy men or only rich men get custody of their children. And so someone might see Dwayne Wade and say, well, he's got money, that's why he has custody. And so using Kevin Federline also shows that the parent who does not have the bulk of the money may also be given custody if it's in the best interest of the children. And so that's what it's supposed to boil down to, is the best interest of the children. All right. Again, hope this information was helpful. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.